Hello, my name is Nicholas Hopper, and this is my AE1601 glider report project on my glider, the Don't Call Me Shirley Falling with Style, or DCMS FWS. Now, as an introduction, this project was the AE1601 glider design, build, and fly activity. The goal of this project was to plan, construct, and to test and deploy a glider that is no more than 16 inches wide and 16 inches long, made primarily of balsa wood, that can be thrown at a distance of 20 feet minimum using only propulsion from the act of being thrown. Now, after this glider is successfully thrown, a video report must then be created to summarize and evaluate the completion of this project. The glider deployed for this project was named the Don't Call Me Shirley Falling with Style, or hereby abbreviated to DHMS FWS for short. This design process then started with requirement analysis. Now, the requirements here were that the maximum length was 16 inches, a maximum width of 16 inches, primarily constructed out of the balsa wood provided to me, that the glider be hand thrown with no propulsion or remote control other than being thrown, the need of the glider to fly 20 feet, and then the vehicle remains intact. These were measured by, first off, the length of the measured glider being no more than 16 inches, the width of the glider being measured at no more than 16 inches, a visual inspection of the glider is mostly balsa based, the ability of the glider to be hand flown, and the lack of propulsion remote control, as well as a recorded flight of 20 plus feet, and a visual inspection of the intact glider after flight. Now, for the first design process, there was design generation. First off, with adhesive analysis. The three adhesives we looked at were painter's tape, hobby glue, and thin CA. The pros of painter's tape is it is easy to remove, quick to apply, and protects against damage when applied to wingtips. The cons, though, is it is heavier than the other adhesives, and it is relatively weaker. And while not the strongest adhesive, though, its ability to be applied quickly and be reapplied easily leads to it being a strong contender while also still not being too weak from testing. Then we have hobby glue, which is fairly strong and lightweight, but it takes a long time to apply. And this meant that the problem was nearly all the drawbacks of tape and thin CA without enough benefits. And then finally, thin CA, which is the strongest, lightest, and is very quick to apply. However, it is much harder to apply correctly, and if it's difficult to apply and to remove if applied improperly. This is definitely the strongest adhesive, but the risk of incorrectly using it would lead to the potential of running out of resources to construct a glider. The verdict with the best probability of success then was tape, which would be the best adhesive due to it being the most forgiving if applied incorrectly. It would be somewhat strong in order to keep the glider together while also then helping protect the wings of the glider as it was thrown. The second part we looked at was wing shape, with elliptical, rectangular, and tapered wings considered. The elliptical wing would have the most lift and improved aerodynamic efficiency, while also, however, being very difficult to accurately cut for symmetry and could add stabilizers to the wing because of the curved shape. The analysis here is it would probably be the best design if properly executed or assembled. Then we have rectangular wings, which are the easiest to produce and have very gentle stall characteristics. However, there was definitely the most induced drag with these wings. And the analysis here being that the most reliable and easiest to produce, given the circumstances, was the rectangular wing design. Finally, we have tapered wings, which had less drag out of all designs and faster. However, they were also a lot harder to cut in a symmetrical fashion for balance. With the drawbacks of elliptical wings being from tapered wings, however, it does not have as many benefits as elliptical wings. Verdict here was that given that I only have one shot of the wings, given the amount of material of balsa that I have, rectangular wings are the way to go because they're the easiest to assemble while also being fairly reliable and less prone to stalling out unexpectedly. Finally, we have materials. There's a material combination of balsa and Play-Doh, which would mean that it would be lighter and more aerodynamic. However, the cons is that we don't have a lot of Play-Doh to work with. We only had one container. However, with the analysis being, as long as there's no extra mass needed, it's the best choice. Now, balsa and then coins to weight the front of the plane would mean more material and mass to work with. However, it's less aerodynamic and less accurate in weight because of the differences of coin masses, and it sacrifices aerodynamics for more weight. Finally, there's balsa and coins and Play-Doh, which would have the most material to work with and more aerodynamic than just having coins. However, it's less aerodynamic than just using Play-Doh, which sacrifices some aerodynamics for more weight. The verdict here was it was determined that there was enough Play-Doh to fulfill the weight requirements, which means that it is the best option due to its ability to be molded into a more aerodynamic form. Secondly, we have the design generation of the initial competing designs. First off, with sizing, the idea behind the sizing of this glider was primarily focused around the idea that the larger glider would have a larger mass, which while meaning that there would be more drag on the glider, it would also mean that because of the larger size and the larger wings, we would have a lot more lift for the glider to be pushed in the wind, and it would be a lot more stable because it would more mass to be pushed around. So we use this full 16-inch by 16-inch dimensions here. These are the overall dimensions of the gliders here for the design 1, Don't Call Me Shirley, with an elliptical wing, and design 2, Falling with Style, with a rectangular wing. So the initial design choices I settled on were testing both the DCMS, Don't Call Me Shirley, and FWS, Falling with Style designs because they both had elliptical and rectangular wing designs respectively, and I wanted to see which ones would be best for the overall glider. Now, for testing here, I designed two separate models which were constructed out of cardboard tape and coin weights in the front of the gliders. The DCMS model was the one with the elliptical wing, and the FWS model was the one with the rectangular wing. These are both composed of the same amount of cardboard with identical lengths, horizontal stabilizers, adhesive, wingspan, front weights, and cord length, the only difference being the wing shape. Now, we had some initial test footage here, with this being the elliptical wing test, and this being the rectangular wing test. Now, what we saw here with the performance evaluation was that while both gliders were tested in the same relative environments, DCMS had trouble flying in a stable path and reaching the 20-foot objective, while the Falling with Style rectangular wings were much more stable and was able to fly up to 27 feet on its longest flight, satisfying all performance parameters. For this reason, FWS was selected as the main model and final product going forward. The planned improvements here were the addition of a vertical stabilizer backwind, the use of balsa wood instead of cardboard, the use of Play-Doh as a weight at the front of the glider, as well as the use of a sturdier painter's tape for adhesive. Going forward, it is decided then that the rectangular wing of FWS was the best way forward due to the problems with the elliptical wing DCMS's control and stability issues. Then the final design here, we have the DCMS FWS. It used the same schematics as earlier provided, just with a rectangular wing here. Now, the overview here is that we use the DCMS FWS design, which combined the wing shape of FWS and the general body characteristics of both DCMS and FWS design iterations. There were some key changes, however. Firstly, the tape was applied on the edges of the wings in order to protect the balsa wings from damage sustained during landings. The other change was the use of triangular vertical stabilizer, which was undertaken in order to better attach the piece to the fuselage of the glider. And finally, another balsa rod piece was attached under the glider to make sure that the center of gravity was a little further forward, as well as making the glider easier to throw. Here's one of the tests of that design. Here's the final test video of this project. Now, the final flight was 26 feet, which is further than required for this project. Here are some final key design elements from that flight. And otherwise, the center of gravity location was located and calculated at 2.75 inches from the front of the glider, which happens to be the same point as the quarter chord, as in there is 0 inches distance between the center of gravity and the center of lift, or quarter chord. The coefficient of lift from the formula right here was calculated at 0.444, while the coefficient of drag using these calculations was calculated at 0.024. Design effects from this project include these following. The center of gravity being the same point of the quarter chord led to a more of a stall because the front of the airplane did not balance out the lift, which led to a stall quickly into the flight, as we saw in this video. The vertical and horizontal stabilizers of the tail here meant a relatively level flight. The tape that was applied to the wings meant the glider stayed intact after landing, and the rectangular wing meant that the glider was stable and had relatively good lift. Now, here are the final design results. Did the DCMS FWS satisfy the requirements for this project? From all the requirements that we saw earlier here, these requirements were all met, every single one. The glider was no larger than 16 inches lengthwise and widthwise. It was primarily constructed out of balsa wood. It was hand thrown. There were no propulsion or remote control. It flew 26 feet in the test flight, and the glider remained intact. In conclusion, while the glider could have been improved, DCMS FWS was a complete success overall. The glider met every objective outlined in the assignment of this project. It was even able to accomplish a max flight length of 70 feet, though this was not the final test flight, unfortunately. So potential improvements here include the moving of the wing further back on the plane to make sure the center of lift was behind the center of mass. This could also have been accomplished by having a heavier weight at the front of the aircraft or glider, which would have meant that it would have stalled a lot slower and would have had a larger overall flight. Using thin CA to apply adhesive for a lighter and more robust design. And finally, laser cutting elliptical wings, which we could have done using a laser cutter, which would have been a lot more precise and would have allowed for a better lift overall on the glider. Some final thoughts. While I am personally drawn to the rocketry aspect of aerospace engineering, I found that I enjoyed the glider project a lot more than I thought I would. While DCMS FWS was varied in how far it would throw at any given time, it was able to reach long distances and never undershot its target distance, leading me to believe it was an overall success and inspiring me to continue my studies and design aspirations in aerospace. Finally, thank you for watching this video, and here are the references for this project.